my golden child sister stole my prom dress I bought with my own money, so I told my grandma everything. Now Madison's in jail. My parents face charges, and I inherited the family fortune. I'm 17 years old, about to graduate from high school. And honestly, I don't even know where to start with this story because it's so incredibly messed up that sometimes even I can't believe all of this happened to me. Basically, my whole life, I've been the black sheep of my family, while my sister Madison, who's 19, has always been the perfect child in my parents' eyes. And when I say they've been unfair to me, I'm not exaggerating even a little bit. I mean, we're talking about such an extreme level of favoritism that it's literally destroyed me for years. I guess I should start by explaining what things were like in my house. You know, so you understand the full context of this craziness. My parents are both like 40, and for as long as I can remember, they've always treated Madison like she's a princess who can do no wrong, while I was basically invisible or worse. I was the one who always got blamed for everything. Madison could break something, scream, hit me, whatever, and my parents would find a way to justify it or directly blame me for provoking her. I, on the other hand, had to earn absolutely everything. I worked since I was 14, doing whatever I could to have my own money because my parents never gave me anything, while Madison received everything she asked for without lifting a finger. The thing is, I got used to living like that, let's say. I thought it was normal, or maybe I really was the problem, like my parents always implied. I got good at hiding, staying out of the way, working hard at school and at my part-time jobs, and basically surviving day to day, hoping I could go to college and finally get out of there. But what happened a few months ago was literally the last straw, the moment when everything exploded in the most dramatic way possible. So, my prom was scheduled for a Friday night, and I had been saving for months to buy myself a nice dress because obviously my parents weren't going to give me money for that. I found a perfect one at a store. It cost me like $200 that I had saved up working after school and on weekends. And I was super excited because for the first time in my life, I was going to go to an important event feeling good about myself, like a normal girl. I had planned everything. My best friend was going to come help me get ready. We had an appointment to get our nails done in the morning. Everything was perfect. And the day of prom, I got home around 5 in the afternoon because the event started at 7, and I needed time to get ready. I went up to my room, and my dress wasn't where I had left it. I panicked, obviously, and started looking for it everywhere, thinking maybe I had moved it and forgot or something. I ran downstairs to ask my parents if they had seen my dress, and my mom, with the most normal face in the world, told me they had given it to Madison because she had an important date that night and needed to look good. I stood there unable to process what I had just heard. Like, are you seriously telling me this an hour before my prom? I tried to explain to them that I had bought that dress with my own money, that it was for my prom, that Madison could wear any of the thousands of dresses they had bought her. But my dad cut me off and told me to stop being selfish, that Madison was older and her events were more important, and that I could go to prom in something else. I was literally shaking with rage and helplessness. I felt like I was drowning, but I knew arguing wasn't going to do any good because it never did. Madison came down the stairs at that moment wearing my dress, looking at herself in the mirror all smug, and told me something like, "Thanks, little sis, for lending me your dress," with that malicious smile she always put on when she knew she was screwing me over. I didn't go to prom. I stayed locked in my room crying all night while my parents went out to dinner like nothing had happened. My friend called me like 50 times asking where I was, but I couldn't even talk. I was completely destroyed. It wasn't just about the dress, you know what I mean? It was about everything, about years and years of being treated like I didn't matter, like my feelings and my things had no value. A few days later, my paternal grandmother, who's like 66 years old and lives in another state, called me super excited asking me to send her pictures from prom because she wanted to see how the dress looked on me and all that. My grandmother has always been the only person in my family who really cares about me, but she didn't live close by and didn't really know how things were at my house because I had never told her the whole truth. I guess out of shame or because I thought she couldn't do anything about it. But that day, something in me broke and I told her everything. I told her exactly what had happened with the dress and that I hadn't gone to prom. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and then my grandmother told me in a voice I had never heard from her, something between fury and sadness, that she was going to come visit me soon and that we would talk calmly. Like a week later, my grandmother arrived in town without telling my parents. She picked me up from school and took me to dinner at a nice restaurant. It was the first time in years that someone had invited me to something like that, where I could order whatever I wanted without feeling like I was a burden. During dinner, she asked me how I really was, and I don't know what happened to me, but I started crying right there in the restaurant. I couldn't stop. After dinner, we went to an electronics store, and my grandmother bought me a new MacBook, one that I had been looking at online for months because I needed it for college, but obviously was never going to be able to buy. She told me it was an early graduation gift and that I deserved it for working so hard. I was in shock. Literally didn't know what to say. No one had ever given me something like that. Something I really needed and wanted. I hugged her and cried again, and she told me that everything was going to be okay. To trust her. When I got home with the laptop, Madison saw it and obviously started with her drama, saying why did I have a new MacBook if she had never had one, that it wasn't fair, all the usual show. My parents immediately asked me where I got that from, and when I told them my grandmother had given it to me as a gift, my mom made an annoyed face and said it was inappropriate to accept such expensive gifts without their permission. Madison literally demanded that I give her the laptop because she needed it more for her classes at community college, and my parents, as always, were on her side. But this time I said no. For the first time in my life, I told them no, that it was my gift and I wasn't going to give it to her. Madison went hysterical, started screaming, and saying I was a selfish bitch, and I, still, with all the rage accumulated from years, told her that if she tried to take my laptop, I was going to tell grandmother absolutely everything they had done to me during all these years, every horrible thing, every moment they had treated me like garbage while spoiling her. And that shut her up for a moment. And my parents also went quiet because I think for the first time they realized I was serious. That night I talked to my grandmother on the phone and told her everything, and when I say everything, I mean everything. I told her about the times Madison had hit me, and my parents did nothing. About how I had to work to buy my own clothes and school supplies while Madison had everything new. About the times I hadn't eaten well, because my parents took Madison to restaurants and left me home alone with leftovers or nothing. About how I had to hide my things because Madison stole them from me, and my parents never punished her. I told her about my 15th birthday when my parents didn't make me any celebration, but threw Madison a huge party for her birthday a month later. I told her about the times Madison had broken my things on purpose, and my parents said it was an accident. I told her absolutely everything, and it was like finally a giant weight had been lifted off me. My grandmother was crying on the other end of the phone. I could hear her clearly. She told me she had no idea things were that serious, that she knew there was some favoritism, but didn't imagine the magnitude of the abuse, because that's what it was. Clear abuse and neglect. She told me that the next day, she was going to come back, and we were going to fix this. That I wasn't going to spend one more day in that house if I didn't want to. Grandma arrived the next day in the afternoon with a man named Robert, who, from what I understood, was her lawyer or someone helping her with legal matters. I'm not really sure. They arrived at my house, and my grandmother told my parents she was coming to help me collect my things because I was going to go live with her. My parents got super defensive, saying she was overreacting, that I was a dramatic liar, that they had always treated me well. My grandmother ignored them and told me to go upstairs and pack what I needed. I went up to my room and started putting my clothes in a suitcase. I was shaking, but I also felt a kind of relief. Like finally, this was ending. Madison came into my room furious, screaming that I was an ungrateful bitch, that I was destroying the family, and I completely ignored her, continuing with my things. That made her more furious, and she came up to me, ripped the suitcase out of my hands, and started taking out my clothes and throwing them on the floor. I told her to get out of my room, to leave me alone, and she pushed me against the wall. What happened next was all so fast, I barely processed it in the moment. Madison grabbed me by the hair and hit my face against the doorframe. I felt an intense pain in my nose and started bleeding everywhere. I screamed and tried to defend myself, but she's bigger than me and was completely out of control. She kept hitting me and screaming incoherent things. My grandmother and Robert ran up the stairs, and Robert had to literally pull Madison off me while my grandmother grabbed me and pulled me away. My face was covered in blood. It hurt horribly, and I couldn't breathe well through my nose. My grandmother was yelling at my parents. How could they allow this? To call an ambulance. But my parents were more worried about consoling Madison, who was crying and saying I had provoked her, that I had started everything. Robert called 911, and my grandmother took me to the bathroom to try to clean me up a bit while we waited for the paramedics. The ambulance arrived and took me to the hospital. My nose was broken, my whole face hurt, I had bruises on my arms where Madison had grabbed me. The doctors asked me a bunch of questions about what had happened and documented all my injuries with photos and reports. My grandmother was there the whole time, holding my hand, and when the doctors left the room for a moment, she told me this wasn't going to stay like this, that she was going to make sure Madison paid for what she did and that my parents also faced consequences for years of neglect. That night, I went to my grandmother's house. I didn't go back to my parents' house, not even to finish collecting my things. My grandmother said she would take care of getting everything later. I settled into the guest room, which basically became my room, and for the first time in years, I slept peacefully, despite the pain in my face and everything that had happened, because I knew I was safe. The next few days were legal chaos. My grandmother, with Robert's help, filed a complete police report about Madison's attack. With all the photos from the hospital and the doctor's statements, the police went to my house and arrested Madison. My parents paid her bail the next day, but she already had formal charges against her for assault. My parents tried to call me like 1,000 times, leaving me messages saying it was my fault Madison was in trouble, that I had divided the family, that I was a traitor. But then, like a week later, the tone of their messages changed completely. Turns out my grandmother wasn't only going after Madison legally, she had also talked to other family members about the situation, and basically the entire extended family had taken my side. Plus, my grandmother is the one who has most of the money in the family. She's the one who was going to leave my parents an inheritance eventually, and according to what she told me, she made it very clear to them that if they didn't accept what they had done wrong and face the consequences, she was going to disinherit them completely, and all her money would go to me. Suddenly, my parents started sending me apology messages, saying they hadn't realized how badly they had treated me, that they wanted to fix things, to please come back home. But I didn't want to know anything about them anymore, honestly. 11 years of mistreatment don't get erased with some fake apologies, motivated by fear of losing money. My grandmother asked me what I wanted to do, and I told her I wanted to keep living with her, that I didn't want to go back to my parents ever, and she completely agreed. My grandmother got me a therapist, a very nice lady who has helped me a ton to process all this. At first, it was hard to even talk about certain things without starting to cry, but over time, I've been getting better. I also had to concentrate on my final exams because I was still in school and needed to graduate, which was super stressful considering everything that was happening. But my grandmother supported me in everything, helped me with what she could, and basically did everything possible so I could focus on school. The legal process kept moving forward. Madison ended up going to jail. I don't know exactly how long. I think like 6 months or something. For the assault charge. My parents also faced charges for child neglect. Although they didn't go to jail but had to pay fines and do community service or something, I didn't pay much attention to the details of their case because honestly I didn't care. My grandmother made sure I had a restraining order against Madison, and I decided not to put one against my parents because I didn't feel like they were going to physically hurt me, although emotionally they had already done enough to me. The next few months were weird. I was living this new life with my grandmother where for the first time someone really cared about me, where I had food on the table, where I could study without fear of Madison coming to destroy my things or hit me, where my achievements were celebrated instead of ignored. My grandmother went to my high school graduation, took like 1,000 pictures, cried when I received my diploma, and then took me to dinner at my favorite restaurant. It was the best day of my life. Basically. When it came time to apply to universities, I had already been accepted to my first choice university, one that's like 3 hours from where my grandmother lives. I had applied months before when I was still living with my parents, and honestly didn't think I would be able to go because I had no way to pay for it. But my grandmother told me she was going to cover all my university expenses, that I should concentrate on studying and healing, that money shouldn't be a problem. I cried, obviously, because I couldn't believe someone was doing so much for me. During all this time, my parents kept trying to contact me occasionally, sending me messages saying they wanted to see me, that they missed having me at home. But I never responded. I have nothing to say to them, honestly. I know they only regretted it when they faced real consequences and when they realized they were going to lose my grandmother's money. If they had really cared about me as a person, as their daughter, they never would have let things get that far. Now I'm 17 still, almost 18, and I'm about to start my first semester in college. I moved into the dorms like a month ago, and honestly, I'm excited and terrified at the same time. I met a guy named Tyler. He's super sweet, and his family is incredibly loving and normal, like the complete opposite of what I grew up seeing. When I went to meet his parents for the first time, I almost started crying because everyone treated each other with so much affection and respect, and they treated me that way too, like I was important, like what I thought and felt mattered. Madison got out of jail recently, according to what my grandmother told me, but I have the restraining order so she can't come near me. My parents are still living their life, I guess. I don't know much about them because I cut all contact. My grandmother visits me often at college, brings me homemade food, and we sit and talk for hours. She saved me, literally. And I don't know what would have become of me if she hadn't intervened when she did. I still go to therapy once a week because there are days where everything hits me all at once and I have a hard time believing that all that really happened to me, that my own family treated me like that for years. My therapist says it's normal, that trauma doesn't go away overnight, that I'm going to have good days and bad days, and that what's important is that now I'm in a safe place where I can heal. And she's right. I mean, I still wake up sometimes at night with nightmares about Madison hitting me or about my parents yelling at me, but they're becoming less frequent. My grades on finals were pretty good considering everything. They weren't perfect, but they were enough. And now in college, I'm doing really well. I have a high GPA and I'm working really hard. I'm studying something I always wanted to study, but my parents said was a waste of time, and it's amazing to finally be able to do what I want without anyone telling me I'm worthless or that I'm wrong. Sometimes I wonder how Madison and my parents are doing, if they've changed, if they truly regret what they did. But then I remember it's not my problem. I don't owe them anything. I don't have to forgive them if I don't want to. I don't have to give them another chance if I don't feel like it. My grandmother says that maybe someday, when I'm ready and if they've really made a real effort to change, we could try some kind of reconciliation, but that it's completely my decision and that she's going to support me no matter what I choose. For now, I'm focused on myself, on healing, on building the life I always wanted to have. I have real friends for the first time, people who treat me well and care about me. I have Tyler, who's patient and understanding, and doesn't pressure me to tell him things before I'm ready. I have my grandmother, who saved me and who keeps saving me every day with her unconditional love. And I have myself, who even though I'm broken in some places, I'm still here, still fighting, still moving forward. Last week was my 18th birthday, and my grandmother threw me a small party. She invited some of my friends from college and Tyler. There was cake, gifts, people singing happy birthday to me, everything I never had when I was younger. And when I was there, sitting surrounded by people who really love me, blowing out the candles on my cake, I realized that I'm finally where I'm supposed to be. Not with the family I got by blood, but with the family I chose and that chose me.